for this. So an easement is a right to enter the land of another for a particular purpose, and a license is permission to enter the land of another for a particular purpose. And that permission can be revoked at any time. But when somebody has a right, you cannot revoke their rights. They can give them up though, but you cannot take away someone's rights once it's been established that they have them. So anytime you hear the word easement, that is a right. All right. So there are two classifications, two types of easements. Easements can either be in gross or appurtenant. What's an easement in gross? It's a utility easement.
Like public service or
for cable, FiOS, gas, electric, those are all easements. So those are all utilities. So those would fall under the classification of easement and gross. And this type of easement, this sentence would only apply to it. If the easement were to cease, the need for the easement were to cease, the easement would cease to exist. That would only apply to a utility easement, to the easement in gross, okay? So what type of easement would cease if the need for it were no longer there?
the easement in gross.
Only the easement in gross. So you need to know, easement in gross is a utility easement, and if the easement need for it would to cease, the easement would cease to exist. And then all other easements are easement appurtenant. They're very appurtenant. So an easement that grants the right of the owner of an adjacent parcel of land, that's the guy next door to you, not the one across the street from you. So a piece of land that's touching yours is adjacent. An easement that grants the rights to the owner of an adjacent parcel of land owned by someone else, because you don't need an easement to cross over your own land. It runs with the land. Once these easements are created, they run with the land, meaning that they pass on to the next owner as well when the ownership is transferred. Now, easement appurtenant always has a dominant estate and a servient estate. Here, listen for a second. Which one do you think benefits from that easement? Dominant or the servient? Without reading. Come on, guys. Dominant or servient? What do you think is going to benefit?
Well, it's a servient, because that's actually a question that's going to come up. The servient tenant?
The dominant. Come on, the bully that pushes you and knocks you over and says, hey, I'm walking on your property. You're just a servant. The dominant one benefit from the easement. Think of it that way. The dominant one is like the bully, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to use your land. But they're not just pushing you around. You gave them the right to, okay? So you're the servient, you're serving your property up on a platter, and the dominant one is going to be the one that's benefiting from it. All right? So there's always two estates, you know, they're owned by different parties. One will be the dominant, one will be the servient. The dominant estate is the one that benefits from the easements. Think of them like a bully. This way you could try to remember it a little bit better, right? Dominant, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're the ones that take your milk money, right? They're the ones that take it. They're the ones that benefit, right? Think of it that way. So like a shared driveway or, you know, well, we'll go over a bunch of different examples, but the dominant one, like if we look at the pictures in the book, and actually, hold on a second, I got to open a web browser. I never opened up a web browser yet. If we look at the pictures in the book on page 99, there's a graphic there for types of easements.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I got this picture here. Of course, I did not download it. I know I downloaded it. I just don't know where the hell it is. All right, so there's a picture here with lot B on the left and lot A on the right. Lot A owner on the right has a lake in his backyard. And lot B owner has access to use the lake. They have an easement appurtenant that allows them access to Lot A owner's property that they could cross over it to get to the lake. All right, so they're the one that is benefiting from that easement, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an easement of pertinent. They're crossing over the other person's property at a benefit. All right. All right. Just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to download some images that I sent myself last week. The class. And of course, this is not one of those images. Great. It always worked out like that. Come on, Vic, what'd you do? Right here. All right, so an easement of pertinence has two estates. There's dominant estate, serving estate. It runs with the land when it's created. It has to be two different landowners of adjacent parcels of land. This type of easement can never be taken away. It's not given up, only by the person who's benefiting from the easement, and that would be who?
The dominant.
The dominant estate, correct. Only the dominant can give up their easement right. Now, an easement by necessity is a type of easement that's created. I probably still have these pictures on my cell phone. An easement by necessity is created when you have a landlocked property. So in order to gain access to your property, you have to cross over your neighbor's land in order to get to yours. That would be an easement by necessity because it's necessary to cross over that neighbor's property in order to get to your property. Makes sense?
Yes.
A landlocked property is, for example, if your property is completely surrounded by other people's properties. The only way to get to it is you have to cross over someone else's.
So when you're crossing over the property, you're always the dominant person because you're walking, trampling on their.
Yeah, you're taking advantage. You're the one that's benefiting from that easement. So yeah, if you're the one that's benefiting from the easement, then you're the dominant estate. Correct. Okay. So a type of easement that's used for the purpose of ingress and egress. Ingress means entrance and egress means exit. That would be the easement by necessity. You know, that's the way that they would probably word it on exam. A type of estate that's used for the purpose of ingress and egress, entrance and exit. That would be the easement by necessity. It's necessary in order to get to your property.
Egress and ingress.
Egress, ingress and egress. You see it here on the slide down the bottom, ingress and egress. Ingress means entrance, egress means exit. For the purpose of ingress and egress, entrance and exit is an easement by necessity.
Okay.
Just saw these pictures a second ago. Here we go. All right. And an easement by prescription, we already spoke about this once before when we were in a different chapter already. I believe when we were doing chapter 20, we spoke about easement by prescription. This one has to be perfected with a suit for adverse possession. It's when you use someone else's property for a period of time as defined by state law. You can take their property if you were using it out in the open, hostile, adverse to their title, exclusive, and without the permission of the owner, you can get that. So when you use someone else's property for a period of time as defined by state law, you could claim ownership of their property. The prescriptive period would be 30 years for improved lands, 20 for unimproved lands. Remember, this is the one that there was a conflict in a law, that there's that common law period right now. But for exams, you're going to study 30 years for improved, 60 years for unimproved woodlands in order to take ownership of that person's property. The use must be continuous, hostile, adverse to the owner's title, exclusive, and without their approval. Additionally, the use must be visible, open, and notorious. You can't be like using it and it's hidden that nobody can tell that you're using it. You're just hiding out in their property. It has to be obvious that you're using it. The person can take the owner to court, claim ownership of their land. That's kind of like a squatter's right, but the lawsuit is referred to as a suit for adverse possession. That's the type of lawsuit that's used to perfect the easement by prescription. When you used it for amount of time as prescribed by law. And what is that time period?
30 years? Wait. Unimproved woodland.
30 years for
Is it 30
improved,
years?
60
30
years.
and 60, 30 and 60,
30 and-
30-year period for improved properties, for improved lands, and 60 years for unimproved vacant woodlands. All right. Now, how do you prevent somebody from gaining an easement by prescription against your property? Well, you could take you got to take legal action against any adverse possessor. Somebody squatting on your property, you got to get them removed, right? Call the cops, and then don't just call the cops to get them removed. Follow up with taking them to court that they cannot use your property. Or you could cut off their direct access, their continued use, thus resetting that 20-year time clock. Or you give them implicit permission to use your property. They can't take your property if you gave them permission to. So let's see, come on. Easements. Got a couple pictures going on here. We got some easements, rights. Okay, I got a bunch of different drawings here and slides for this. Let's get this one. Look like there's something on this slide. Let's just click on it. All right, I guess there's nothing on that slide. So we could delete it. Well, not much on this slide either, but okay. So basically, if you use somebody's property for a period of time, let's see, we got lot owner A and lot owner B over here. Lot owner A had to put up a fence on lot owner B's property, clearly over the property line, and they only used it for 15 years. But then they left the property to their child, or they sold it to someone else. That next person can possess it for 5 years. Like if we're going with that 20-year period, should probably go with the 30, what's going on exams, and to reach that prescriptive period of time. So here, let's actually do that. Let's correct it here. So let's say lot owner A put up this this thing on lot owner B's property, this fence right here. All right. If they had this fence up there, they got to have it up there for, well, if it's improved lands, okay. For improved lands, let's see. It's 30 years, and unimproved or woodlands, it's 60 years, right? So let's just say here, there's a house on the property. Guess what? That's an improved land, okay? Oh. So they got to keep this there for 30 years. And the person that lived there for 25 years, and they leave it to someone else, they only need to have it for another 5 years, right? To reach that prescriptive period.
So in this case, the easement would run with the land. It runs with the land in that case too, like that. If I pass it on to the next, if I sold the property, the other person could use the remaining years.
Yep. Easements, well, first of all, yeah, easements run with the land, but this easement has not been created yet. An easement by prescription is when you're taking someone's property, okay? But you can pass on your time to reach the easement's required prescriptive period, like with the easement by prescription. That's what this is, through the use of adverse possession. So the adverse possessor can pass on their time to someone else, but they would have had to have been successors in interest. All right, so this is for adverse possession, and this is a easement by prescription. They call it an easement by prescription because you have to reach that prescribed period of time before you could perfect such easement. Now, if we look at the book on page 99, we're going to highlight an easement by prescription under easement of pertinent, an easement that grants the rights of the owner to an adjacent parcel of land is an easement of pertinent. And then go underneath the picture and write, for an easement of pertinent to exist, there must be two adjacent tracts of land, each owned by different parties. The tract over which the easement runs is known as the servient estate. The tract that's the benefit from the easement is the dominant estate. So who's the dominant estate here in an easement by prescription?
A.
Lot owner A is, because they would be the one that would benefit from this easement. All right. And let me see, if we turn the page, easement by necessity, we're going to highlight on the second sentence. An easement by necessity can be acquired by gaining access to real estate that would otherwise be landlocked. And then beneath it, you're going to continue highlighting for the purpose of ingress and egress, entrance and exit. And an example of that here would be an easement in gross
Victor,
Yep.
how is the
Oh.
adverse possession proven?
How's what?
The adverse possession, how's it proven?
In court.
I mean, what do you present?
I
to-
don't know how you've been using it. So that's the best answer you're gonna get from me.
Oh, well.
But it needs to be out in the open. I don't know. Did you have a fence up there or were you living on the property? I don't know. How are you using the property?
Okay, so
Okay.
Yeah.
let's say that it is proven.
Yeah.
So then they have position, and what if that person decides to sell their property?
Okay, this is what happened. I just want to say my part. I bought this house, and actually my fence was like, I think like 5 inches into the other property. So they were friends at the time, and the lady that was living there, she had no problem. So when the property was sold to me, they disclosed that, and I was like, no, wait a minute, the house is empty now. So that the friend was not living there anymore. She was going to sell the house. So I was like, no, you have to fix it. Just put the fence back in its place where it should be. So they actually fixed it for me because now there's another owner.
You don't want to have any problems.
I don't
with the
want
next owner.
exactly because I know that's not mine.
Yeah.
So why would I want my fence there?
Yeah.
So my attorney actually, he was like, no, don't, just let them do it because that's gonna cost you money. And yep, that's what happened.
That's considered an encroachment, right?
Anything that crosses over the property line is an encroachment. So yes.
So the adverse possession, once that's proven by court, it's actually, okay, now you're able to use it. Now, the property that you're using, you're the dominant word, the person that's allowing you, or you can use it now as the servient one. All right, once that is established, once the people who serve, the servients, if they sell that property to someone else, that adverse possession still exists, or they still have to allow someone to use their land? New buyer.
Well, hold on a second. Easement by necessity. I'm sorry. An easement. We're talking about easement by prescription here still.
We talking about adverse, yes.
Yeah, an easement by prescription is against the owner's permission. Nobody ever gave you permission to use it in the first place. Because if somebody gave you permission, you cannot gain an easement by prescription if the owner gave you permission to use it. If I give you permission to use my land, you can't claim ownership of it.
Okay.
You can only claim ownership if you've been squatting there, you've been using it without my permission, and I didn't take any legal action to get you to stop. Or I didn't cut off your access. Look, here's the different ways you could take this off.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, so once that adverse possession, okay, I've been doing this for 30 years. Now I have a right to do it, right?
You don't know, it's my property. You don't have the right to do it. Look, you got to perfect it in a court of law.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I don't care if it's been there for 60 years.
So once it's perfected in a court of law, property that you use, they decide to sell that property. That adverse possession, because it's been perfected in that court of law, it's still
Stop right there. Stop right there. When it's perfected in a court of law, you're now the owner.
So the bully would own. He's the owner he has the right to continue to use that.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let's look at the picture here. We got lot owner A on the left, lot owner B on the right. Lot owner A put up this fence clearly over the property line, right?
Yeah.
And if it's been there for 25 years and he sells the property, you're saying what?
Okay, so now I understand. If it's been appointed by court, that means you now the owner. So
well, not after 25 years, only after 30. So if you sell it when he's been only using it for 25 years, that next owner or this current one should get this guy off the property, because he's there 5 more years, he can take you to court to perfect that easement and gain the ownership through the process of adverse possession, because you've been adversely possessing that property against the owner's permission.
Okay, you saying a fence though, but what if a fence? They saying to acquire, to use their land, going back and forth, walking back and forth.
Well, if you got your fence on my property, you are using my land.
No, I'm saying, but okay. What if a fence is not there, but I still decide to just go back and forth walking in this, this area?
and you create a trail by constantly going over it.
Yeah.
Well, as an owner B, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a fence where it really belongs, right here on the property line, and I'm going to cut off your direct access to it.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that's cutting
Because-
off the access. That's one way that you can prevent an easement by prescription. So here, let me put this here. Ways to prevent
Because in the, okay, all right.
gaining
And I understand it, but I'm just trying to get a further understanding.
an easement
Adverse.
by prescription.
Prescription adverse.
These are the ways that they could prevent you from gaining an easement by prescription, is by either taking A to court, getting them to remove their fence and to stay off your property, by giving A permission to be on the property that resets the time clock, or they could cut off the direct access by putting up their own fence where it belongs.
All right, I get that. In the book, it doesn't specify that it's actually a fence.
Well, it could be because they're just, maybe they built a shack and they're living on your property. Maybe
So
it's not a
somewhat
fence.
tangible.
They're
it's something
using your
tangible.
property in some way.
Okay. So it's not just walking back and forth over
Well,
your.
it could be. It could
Okay.
be that you're using, that you've been using it so long that you carved the trail into the ground because you've been walking over that person's property.
Okay, so that's my point there. Once this is established in court for 30 years, say for instance, even, you left and that tacking came on from your relative and you reached those 30 years. And it's just, I just been walking. This is the way I've been walking for 30 years and it's been established in court. I can use this. Okay,
Well-
so the servient people who you now use their land and it's been established in court that so what if they decide to sell? The new people that come in, the new buyers, have to allow you to use that land?
Okay, who just bought their property? Who just bought a property that, or the neighbor sold the property? Who was that was talking before?
Okay,
B,
all right,
Okay,
subservient
Tracy?
one.
Is that Tracy?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so Tracy, you sold your property or your neighbor sold it?
All right, my property, okay, let's just say my property is being used by the people next door.
Okay, so they sold the
Established in
property.
court, and the courts say, okay, it's been 30 years, they're allowed to use it. So now I decide to sell my property. The new people that are coming in, or the buyers that are coming in to buy my property, have to allow next door neighbors to continue to use it.
Did you take them to court and claim ownership of the property, or did they?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Whose property is being used?
Okay.
Okay, so B, Tracy's a subservient one. She's selling me the property.
Right.
You're
So
A.
Tracy's B.
Yeah, Tracy's
Yeah.
B. You're A. You're the aggressor. You're taking advantage,
Okay,
right?
and I'm selling not my property.
No,
Mm.
she's selling B. She's the subservient. She sold
Okay.
it to me. So she want to know me, Ellen,
If I'm A, then
you the aggressor. Yeah,
Okay.
you're the aggressor. So you're the bully, right?
and she's selling her property, yeah, I would want them to remove her. I would want the neighbor to remove the fence that they put way over the property line. Because look, when the buyer of B comes in to get a survey done, they're going to see that that fence is way over the property line. And they're not going to want to buy that property and having problems with the neighbor already.
Yep,
They're going to want you to take care of that issue.
Exactly.
yep.
So
Right.
my question is, if it's been established in court that they're allowed to use it, does that still hold for the new owners?
But that's what he was asking you,
Oh, hold
Tracy,
on a second.
30 years already.
That's what I'm saying.
Hold on. You guys are talking two separate issues. One is the
No.
fact that there's a fence, and the other is the ownership of the property. Don't confuse the issues, okay? If I allow you to put a fence on my property, then I allowed you to put a fence on my property. You're never going to gain ownership of it because I gave you permission to have it there.
What if you didn't give permission?
You
Well,
ain't
that's a
get
different
permission 'cause
story.
you're the one
Hold on a
that-
second.
you're-
That's a
Well, that's what
different
I've been
story.
saying.
Well, no. You guys keep saying, well, if I transfer the ownership and they continue to give permission to have the fence there. Well, permission is the whole key.
No, I said it. No, I said if that 30 years adverse possession have been established in court for these people to use the property, right? If that's been established by the court,
Then it's their
it's
property.
been established, then it's there. So
Even if she sold it.
decides to sell.
Well, if you're selling,
A
what are you
still
selling?
allow-
You're selling your property,
B,
and this is no longer your property because they already took you to
That's what I
took
wanted
ownership
to
of it.
hear. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
so
it-
now, okay. So Victor, now I have a question. Because she was able to establish, A was able to establish in court the adverse possession, but now Tracy sold the property to me when she
Okay,
was
so what
thinking
did she
about
sell to
selling the
you?
property.
stop. What did she sell to
She
you?
sold me. She sold me.
She didn't
B,
sell you
the
up to
property.
here. She sold you up to
He
here.
said it's no longer mine because
This area
it
right
was
in
established
here is
it
no
belongs
longer
to A
hers
now.
because A took her to court
Ah.
and claimed ownership of it. So what is Tracy selling? What is B selling? B
Oh,
is selling
telling
only
me that
up to
small
here.
portion. That, oh, okay, that small portion.
So,
Got
so
you.
this is documented, and once the land surveys come in, that land it's just no longer yours. Okay.
That's it. That's the whole purpose of taking you to court, to take your land.
So it's recorded now.
Yeah, you're gonna have court documents from it.
Oh, wow. So now are they gonna make that a new survey line, a new line, or they're gonna still, you know
Well,
what
you're
I'm
gonna need
saying?
that. You're gonna need that information to fight it in court and to prove that in court.
Uh-huh.
Where exactly were you using? The judge isn't gonna be like, okay, so you were using some kind of an area that I don't know and I can't see and I can't visualize. So we're just talking in general. And then you could just take any amount of land that you want. No, they're gonna want to see proof. They're gonna want to see property lines. They're gonna want to see surveys. They're gonna want to see some kind of evidence for you to claim the ownership. They're not just gonna go just off of your whatever kind of story you could spin in court. They're gonna want to see the actual, where's the fence, or
Where's the
how have you been using it? They're gonna need to see some kind of evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you should cut that stuff off right away. If
Yeah,
somebody,
that's hard. I think
Yeah,
that's pretty hard.
absolutely. Yeah, you got to take action against any adverse possessor immediately.
So what, let me ask you, so you know how people go, let's just say they have land, elderly people. This happens all the time because a lot of people are not paying attention to
Listen.
their property.
Listen, you guys, don't you guys remember the video that I just showed the other day about here, hold on a second. Here's another video of the same story that you didn't see the other day. Let me play you a video real quick here.
you got to be an aggressive older person. Get you a shotgun and say, "Get off my property."
Yeah, you really.
And New Jersey, good luck with that.
Tell me about it.
Oh, you don't need luck. Just do it.
And deal with the consequences.
Be bold. You got to be bold too.
Yeah, that's really bold.
Mm-hmm.
But people go around doing it.
Yeah, they bold. They get bold. You get bold back. What the heck? I just wonder how many cases were ever proven like that.
I'm sure a lot.
It's not easy to prove. It's not an easy proof. And it's the law is mostly in place for farmers, but other people try using it all the time. We've already seen a video or two about this, and now you guys are going to see another one.
Oh yeah, those houses, people were squatting.
How to live in a multi-million-dollar mansion for free. Didn't pay a dime, just walked in and squatted. And so far, some upset neighbors haven't been able to do anything about it. ABC's Ron Claiborne has the details.
It's a magnificent mansion in a Tony neighborhood in upscale Boca Raton, Florida, worth $2.5 million. But the guy living there these days is paying nothing. He's squatting. And at least for now, no one can legally get him out. His name is Andre Barbosa, a 23-year-old native of Brazil, seen here on his Facebook page. Barbosa moved in last September after the last owner, unable to keep up with the mortgage payments, moved out.
There's been so many foreclosures that there's been a loss of control of property.
Incredibly, the squatter filed legal papers citing adverse possession, an obscure 19th century state law that allows someone to claim an empty property by occupying it for 7 years. Barbosa, whose nickname is Loki after the Norse god of mischief, posted this no trespassing notice. Barbosa's new, neighbors aren't at all amused.
Nobody's happy. We all spent a lot of money to live on this street.
Adverse possession is legal in all 50 states. Kenneth Robinson lived in this $300,000 home in Texas for free for 8 months before he was finally ousted. In the Florida case, Bank of America tells ABC News, "We have filed the appropriate and immediate legal action to have this trespasser removed from the property. In the meantime, this mischievous master of this mansion lives on in luxurious splendor for free." For Good Morning America, Ron Claiborne, ABC News, New York.
I guess I just don't get this one. There is an owner of the bank.
Right,
He owns the
exactly.
bank.
And trespassing is still illegal, correct? So why can't the police just go in?
Bizarre. Guess we're gonna find out.
Why couldn't the police just go in and remove them?
Because he have the law on his side. He went in there he occupied it for 7 years. And
No, that's trespassing.
He filed, right?
Why
He
can't
filed.
because he filed court
He
documents.
filed,
That's
yeah.
why. That's why they couldn't just go in and remove him for trespassing, is because he filed court papers. And if he's got court papers, the police aren't there to make decisions of whether he has a lawful right to be there or not. Only a judge
That's
can
not
do
their
that.
job, yeah.
But let me ask you, okay, when did he file? Did he file the day that he went in, or did he file? Do you have to file?
It doesn't matter. The cops aren't there to make that decision. Only a judge can. Oh, here's the follow-up video on it.
We begin with.
Can you guys see this video or no?
We've been following on air
No.
for
All right,
the
hold
past couple of hours now. Bank of America taking possession of a home in Boca Raton that is being occupied by a squatter. We have live
Oh, yeah,
live
that's the one.
coverage. Good evening. I'm Shannon Kate.
And I'm Jay Cashmere. After 5 weeks, the saga of a $2.5 million mansion appears to be over.
News Channel 5's Axel Bank has been following this story for us. He begins our live Team 5 coverage. He's joining us live tonight with details.
And right now, Boca Raton police are finishing the process right now of clearing this home of any material, of any personal effects, or anybody. Right now, you can see that Boca Raton police are here at the front door of the house. They have since taken possession of it along with Bank of America. Just to the left of some of those police officers is a Bank of America security guard. And then there on the front door, you can see a piece of paper was posted on the front door, presumably ordering everybody to stay out of this house. But what's been happening in the last half hour or so, a gigantic truck was driven up this driveway here, and all of the personal effects, either belonging to the squatter or to the previous owners of the home, were removed out of this this front garage door here. We saw a couple of televisions and a couple of other garbage bags of personal effects that were removed by Bank of America. Now, one of the things that has been going on here is the questions about who was inside. When police officers went around and was looking for people inside the house, they didn't find anybody. Loki Boy wasn't in the house. Andre Barbosa is his real name. He wasn't there. And no one else who was believed to be squatting with him were inside the house. And right now, Boca Raton police say they are not conducting an active search for anybody right now. And again, under the circumstances, we're not pursuing anyone in terms of someone of interest. We're not looking for anyone to file charges at this point, and we'll continue to work with property owner and the state attorney's office if necessary to continue our inquiry into this matter. And so Boca Raton police had not gone into the house over the last few weeks because they were waiting from word from the state attorney's office. The state attorney gave them basically kind of just an overarching kind of viewpoint that they had the authority to go in and check out Bank of America's trespassing suspicion. The Bank of America basically said, we believe somebody is trespassing in this house. And then the state attorney's office said, yes, Boca Raton police, you can go ahead and conduct a search. And that's what Boca Raton police did here today. Nobody in this house right now. And there's an order on the front door for everybody to stay out from now on. Live in Boca Raton, Evan Axelbank, WPTV News Channel 5.
Well, meanwhile, residents in this Boca Raton neighborhood are certainly celebrating right now. They are relieved, they say, that the squatters are finally gone. News Channel 5's Marissa Back continues our live team coverage with what they're saying tonight. Marissa?
Yeah, Shannon, neighbors saying that this is definitely the day that they have been waiting for over the last few days. Many of them opening up to me about how they had lost sleep over this. They had been fearing for their safety, worrying about the unknown amount of people that could have been coming in and out of this house as they please. Now, a few neighbors say they even went so far as to look into purchasing this $2.5 million home just so that they could get whatever squatters were inside out. Now they can rest assured that the home is back in the hands of Bank of America, and they say that there was no way the squatters were going to get away with this in their neighborhood.
People care about each other in this neighborhood. We know what's going on. When there's a hurricane or there's a problem,
It must be nice to have it like that, that you could go in there and buy a $2.5 million home just to get rid of some guy who's squatting in your neighbor's house. That must be nice to have it like that.
Wow. Wow.
All right, here, let me play a different video for you guys from an attorney. You can listen to an attorney explain how, why they have this adverse possession thing here together, all together.
For an attorney or for just a property owner, I think a lot of times people don't even realize that this body of law exists. When you own your first home or you get your first survey, you start to realize how important boundaries can be. My name is Jessica Shrestha. I'm an attorney at Wheeler, Van Sickle, and Anderson. That's here in Madison, Wisconsin. The concept of adverse possession is that, well, first you start, everyone has a deed to their property. There's a legal description, there's a boundary, whether it's a lot or something else, specific distances, and that's your boundary. But as everyone knows, it's hard to figure out where those are. And a lot of times actual occupation on the ground doesn't necessarily match the real boundary lines. Sometimes it's a matter of a few inches, but sometimes it gets to be, we're talking feet, acres, a whole 40-acre parcel sometimes. And it turns out that if you occupy and use an area of property for long enough and treat it as your own property, the doctrine of adverse possession makes that your property by law. It's more complicated exactly how that applies, but that's the basic concept. Over time, property can become yours even if you don't have a deed that describes it. Adverse possession comes up most often for a typical property owner with a fence. That's really the classic example, and that has been for as long as we've had real property and the law of adverse possession. Someone will construct a fence, and even if they get a survey to tell them exactly where the property line is, they might construct their fence a foot inside their property. They want to make sure they can stay on the other side, for example, or a foot on the other side. Sometimes it's a greater distance. And over time, they forget, or maybe they didn't know where the exact boundary was in the first place, and that fence might become the boundary by operation of adverse possession. Same thing goes with lines of trees and hedges, or even people might place a shed on a neighbor's property. And that's in a city lot. The same thing though can happen with pasturing cattle or with fences for cropland. When a client or a potential new client comes to me and they think they have a boundary dispute or maybe an adverse possession situation, to start, I think the easiest way to think about it is you have to ask the basic questions: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The who is really important. Who are the parties involved? And with adverse possession, it's not going to just be the current property owner necessarily. Do you have a governmental entity? Who owned that property 20 years ago? The what sort of property is involved? Is it hunting property, a city lot? Those are important things to know about property and deciding if you have adverse possession.
Why is it important to know if it's a city lot?
Why is it important to know if it's a city lot?
Why is that important to know? She just said it really quick, as you got to pay attention to what it is she's saying. Huh?
I can't understand her, what she's saying.
You can't hear it?
I can hear it, but
you can go back a little bit.
She sounds muffled. She sounds really muffled.
Yeah.
You can go back a little bit.
You just had
City always has authority over any property, no matter how many years. Is that the reason?
Yeah, the government you cannot take public land. You could through adverse possession. You could only take privately owned property. That's why it's important to find out whether it is owned by an individual or not. Here, I'll back it up.
Didn't you just have
I'll back it up maybe in minutes so that you guys can listen to this, okay? Hold on.
Didn't you just sell a property like that? Someone was using the city, they put a fence around the city's
Yeah,
property.
but they did not take ownership of it. They're
Yeah.
using it, but they're not claiming ownership of it.
Right.
That's
You
why it
said
was-
you sold a lot, right?
That was important. No, I sold the person's property who had a fence around his city
Oh,
lot.
the person's
I had
property.
to make it a point that that person that was buying knew that it was not part of the lot,
Oh,
that it was city property. Because
Mhm.
if they thought that it was, that we implied such because there was a fence there, they could try to later on turn around and sue us claiming, oh, we thought that that was part of the lot, because that affected our purchase price because all this
Yeah.
extra land was included. And I made it a point to tell them that, no, this is, come over here. This is where their lot ends, somewhere in this general area over here. All of that is city property, even though they got a fence around it. That's city property. That's not owned by them. They're
And they
able
still
to use
purchased?
it. They have to cut the grass. What's that?
They still purchased?
Yeah, they still purchased the house. Yeah, they still purchased the house. They got, hey, it's extra land that even though they don't own it, they're not paying taxes on it because they don't own it, but yet they get the use of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let me try to crank up the volume a little bit more, see if you could understand what she's saying. I rewound it just about a minute.
Pasturing cattle or with fences for cropland. When a client or a potential new client comes to me and they think they have a boundary dispute or maybe an adverse possession situation, to start, I think the easiest way to think about it is you have to ask the basic questions: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. You know, the who is really important. Who are the parties involved? And with adverse possession, it's not going to just be the current property owner necessarily. You know, do you have a governmental entity who owned that property 20 years ago? A what sort of property is involved? Is it hunting property, a city lot? Those are important things to know about property and deciding if you have adverse possession. When? Are we talking 20 years of adverse possession? Was it occupied between 1930, 1950? What time period? Where? How much property is involved? What is the actual boundary line that's in dispute? And why? There's a recent case in Wilcox versus the state of Hines that told us it is important why you were possessing the property. Did you intend to possess it? Was it with the permission of the true owner? Did you think it was your property? And then very importantly, how? What were your acts of possession that constitute adverse possession? When I have all of that information, I sit down and I think, does this equal adverse possession? I compare it to the case law. And then I start to think about possible defenses and different related doctrines maybe that could come into play, such as the doctrine of acquiescence or easements. Attorneys should know that the statute isn't going to answer their question in most cases. You need to look at the entire body of law that has developed over time. The adverse possession statutes actually codify the common law. And so there are different elements even in the cases than ours are listed even in the statute. So the elements of adverse possession are continuous.
All right, let me rewind this. Pay attention to this, okay? Hold on one second. You guys got to pay attention to what she's saying right now.
So the elements of adverse possession are continuous, exclusive, open and notorious, and hostile possession.
Now, isn't that what we have in the book here? We're actually, let's go to the book on page 100. We're going to highlight when someone has used another person's land for a period of time as defined by state law, an easement by prescription may be claimed. In New Jersey, the prescriptive period is, and we see where it says 20 years. I want you to write in the margin. I want you to put a little arrow from that into the margin and write 30 years for improved lands, 60 for woodlands. 30 years for improved lands, 60 for woodlands.
Mm-mm.
30 years for improved lands, 60 for woodlands.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
That 60 for the woodlands will be, the 30 for improved lands will be something with property built on it. The woodlands would be an empty space with maybe trees or anything, even if it was one tree.
Yes. Well, it's unimproved lands. There's no improvements.
Lands.
What's,
Okay.
what's an improvement?
I'm sorry.
What's an improvement?
When you're adding on to it, like when you're adding the property onto it, you're building on it.
When you're building on it,
Okay.
or you're using it as part of yours.
Hold on a second. What is an improvement? An improvement is not just a house. It could be you have a paved road there. That now it's improved lands.
Or a fixture.
So,
Right.
well, anything, improvement's not necessarily a structure. It could be that you got pipes going on the land. Are those man-made improvements?
Yeah.
You got a walkway. You got a driveway that's paved. Those are improvements. So improved lands only require 30 years adverse possession. Unimproved lands, woodlands, would require a 60-year possession. All right. And then after you wrote that on the side over there, that little reference, also write conflict, page 341. So this conflict between these 20 years and the 30, 60 years is a conflict that is further explained on page 341. That's where we saw it in chapter 20, I believe it was.
So right, conflict, page 341.
Correct.
Okay.
But what you're going to study for exam is the 30-year period and the 60-year period, not the 20-year.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because right now there's listen, this is the law. The law is not perfect, obviously, because there's a conflict in the law right now until they fix the law. You know, until our politicians sit down, they fix the law, which they've been working on for 8 or 9 years already.
Wow.
In the meantime, they want to pass some stimulus funds. They could do it overnight, right? They want to write a bill that gives them millions of dollars they could give their friends for a library or a bridge to nowhere or what have you. They could pass that overnight. You know, they want to fix a actual real problem now. It takes them 9, 10 years to do. But if it's something that puts money in their pockets that they could piss away on something or benefit themselves to enrich their own wallets, they could pass this stuff overnight, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So let's continue highlighting in the second paragraph. An owner can halt the process by specifically granting permission for the use or by cutting off the continuous use. Now, I want you to write another thing above that. They could also take legal action, right? They can also take legal action, you know, against any adverse possessor. They could also take action against an adverse possessor. Okay.
Then you gave 3 ways. You gave 3 ways on how to do that, correct?
Yeah. Well, you just highlighted it. They could halt the process by specifically granting permission. They could cut off the continuous use, and then I just had you write in there, or they could take legal action.
Okay.
To get them removed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna play this rest of this video. We'll continue here.
Whereas there is no reference of most of those terms in the statutes themselves.
Okay, wait a minute. She just said that in order to gain an easement by prescription, let me rewind this. What are the things that are required?
Exclusive, open and notorious, and hostile possession. Whereas there is no reference of most of those terms in the statutes themselves.
What? There's no reference to those requirements in the law. In order to gain an easement by prescription, it has to be open, notorious, adverse, hostile to the owner's possession, although none of those things are specifically listed in the law. Those specific words are not used. Interesting.
Attorneys also need to know that you shouldn't just look at either the first case or even the last case. It's been a long and complex doctrine that has evolved over time. And a good place to start is probably the latest case, but there are plenty of cases from.
All right. Anyway, now she's just talking legal mumbo jumbo. But I was basically saying, you know, in order to have the law, you know, the adverse possession, in order to gain adverse possession, it's not so simple as what you're getting out of this, you know, because as you could hear, it's getting kind of complicated now, what she's talking about. Oh, we got to check the laws. You know, they got these words in order to gain an easement, but then they're not really specifically quoted those words in the law books. But you got to look at the latest cases, but then again, we've referenced cases back from the 1700s, you know? So it's like, it's not,
they should get rid of that.
It's complicated. It's not easy. And they've got these laws in all 50 states. They got them there for a reason, because there are land disputes that come up. That's how she started this whole story, you know? Land disputes do come up for various reasons. And it's not just for farmland, but that's often where you see it. It could be where there's, she said, often you also see it, the most common place where you see it is fence disputes, okay? Now with farmland, well, sometimes there's unused land, you know, and a farmer's been using it. So they could, if they've been using it for grazing their animals on it for ages, right? Can they claim the ownership of that land?
They can.
If they've been using it for long enough, yes, they can. All right. Now, it used to be in this country ages ago that in the United States, if you picked out a piece of land that was not owned by an individual, it was not claimed by anybody, you could claim that land through something that we had called homesteading.
Yeah, homestead.
Okay?
Yeah.
But
a little better. All that other stuff creates too many problems.
Well, the purpose of it is basically to ensure that all land is being used, all land available for private use is being used, and the appropriate tax dollars are being paid on it, of course.
But if you told that your fence is an encroachment on someone else's property, get it fixed. I mean, because then it creates all
right, here, let me play devil's advocate for a second. You're telling me that the fence is on my property. Why don't you remove it? Get it fixed. Here's my reply. Screw you.
That's what I'm saying. It creates, well, that's still hostile, but if you're told to do it, it's still going to be hostility. But if it's not yours, it's not yours.
Okay, hold on a second. You told me to remove it. So obviously it's not, you didn't give me permission, right?
Right.
And I'm just still saying, screw you, neighbor. And if you just keep, it's obviously against your permission. We got a rift now going on between us, but I don't remove it. And you didn't take any legal action to get me to remove it.
That would be the next step.
If I keep it there long enough and you didn't do nothing about it, but you're always grumbling to your friends, oh, my neighbor's an ass, you know, my neighbor took my property. Oh, my neighbor, but they put their fence up on my property. Obviously, you're always complaining about it, but you ain't doing the damn thing about it to get me to remove it. If I keep it up there long enough, I could make a claim of adverse possession and take ownership of your property that I've been using, obviously against your permission. We know that you didn't give me permission because look, I can pull your friends up there as witnesses and they're like, oh no, she's angry about that neighbor.
Yeah, well, that's the point, and then you should do something about it. But
we got all these instances where she called the cops, but she did nothing. They should follow up on it.
Yeah.
You have to.
Got to follow up. You got to take action against any adverse possessor. That's basically the bottom line. So what do we need to know for exams? We don't need to get into the deep woods of the details here. We just need to get into what is an easement by prescription? It's where one owner can take the ownership of the land if they've been using it out in the open, hostile, adverse to the owner's title, and without their permission for a period of time as defined by law for the prescribed period of time. And what is that prescribed period of time?
30 to 60 years.
30 years for improved lands, up to 60 for unimproved lands, right?
Yes.
All right. And then how can you prevent somebody who's already reached that prescriptive period from taking the ownership?
You can take action against them to get it removed by?
You got to take action against any adverse possessor. How else?
Give them a license if...
give them permission. Yes, that's a nice way of putting it. Give them a license. What else?
Let's see. read some of that stuff.
So
Open
we
up
just
the
take,
door.
what's that?
No, okay, never mind.
No, what did you say?
Something about the law. Wait. The use must be visible, open, and notorious.
Cut off their direct access. Put up
Oh,
a
yeah.
put up a fence where it really belongs,
good.
right on the property line.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. Now sometimes we get, so basically back to this image here. Okay. So we could either take legal action, take them to court, give them permission, or cut off their access by putting up a fence where it really belongs. Then you're cutting off their direct access to this area. So then they can't claim it. Now you just reset that time clock. Now you take them to court to get them to remove that fence that they built on your property. Don't go ripping down that fence on your own though. Why did I tell you not to go ripping off the fence that your neighbor built on your property? Why am I telling you not to tear it down?
Because then he's gonna go ahead and sue you for destructing this.
For destroying their property that's on their property.
Yeah, that's on your property.
And the example I usually give is, because people don't understand that. They're like, well, he built it on your property. But if I park my car in your driveway, can you take a sledgehammer to it?
No, that's I can't destroy your property.
Yeah, you're destroying my property. Well, it was parked in my driveway. It doesn't matter. It's my property. You can't just take a sledgehammer. You had to take legal action. What kind of legal action did you do? You called the cops and had the cops tow it.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's why, I mean, the legal action is a little bit different for the fence, to getting the fence removed, right? The cop can't make that decision. Only a judge can. But, so that's a little bit different than with the car, But then we're talking real property versus personal property as well. But kind of, I'm just trying to give you a visual on it, so some kind of a visual comparison. All right, so that's adverse possession. Then we have this one, an easement by necessity. Easement by necessity is for the purpose of ingress and egress for landlocked properties. So here, let me, easement by necessity. And let's just say that you got lot owner A and lot owner B over here. Lot owner B, how did they get to their property? You got to have some kind of a road or something, road or driveway that they can get to their property, right?
Yes.
So who owns this road?
Lot owner A owns the road because the lines are here.
That's right. So a lot owner B can only use it for the purpose of ingress or egress, entrance and exit. That's ingress. That's entrance. Or egress. That's exit. Okay. So this is type of easement can only be used for the purpose of ingress and egress. So who owns this driveway? It's lot owner A. Who needs to maintain this driveway?
Well, it's A's. He should maintain it. But
It's
B
his property. He's got to maintain it. So lot owner B can only use it for the purpose of ingress and egress to get access to his land, to get on and off his property. That's it. He doesn't own the property. Doesn't need to maintain it. Doesn't need to. It's not his. He can't park his car there and just leave it there, because even though he could use that road, it's not his personal driveway. It's not his property. He can't be parking his car on it. He can use it to get into his property and to get off of it, but that's it.
Let me ask you a question. I'm trying to visualize this property. I have a friend and her property. Okay, so it was two houses side by side in East Orange, right?
All right, let me show you exactly what you're talking about already, because I already know. How about that? Actually, you know what? Instead of trying to redraw this picture, I already have it drawn. I already know what you're saying. You're talking about shared driveways, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
How does that?
Yeah. Hold tight 1 second. Here we go. Here's one for it. All right. That's not the one though that I'm looking for. It's the only picture I had on there. Hmm. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Gotta start labeling some of these slides here. That's not it, and we could delete this one too. It's the only picture I got in this slide. It's an awful slide. I know I got a full picture about this already. Whole scenario. Bear with me just 1 second, will you? Yeah, this thing's not even nothing even there. Anything on this slide? Nope. Sorry guys, just bear with me 1 second here. We'll track it down. Probably one of those slides that don't have access to no more that broke. Yeah. I'm not seeing it here. So okay, so you got two neighboring properties that are side by side.
Yeah.
They got a shared, what they got, do they have a garage in the back of the property probably?
So they don't have a garage. They have a shared driveway off of Sanford Avenue, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, when you go in the back, her home is on the right. His is on the left. But it seemed like you go straight down the driveway. Of course, if you're going to go to his parking area, you're going to go left.
Where's this parking area? In the back of the house?
In the back of the house. But it seemed like he had a gate that was more, it was encroaching close on her property. Although the driveway was in the middle, but when you get there was a fence, like a wooden fence, and it was more on. So she has smaller
All right.
yard space.
So what she's got is something going on that's like this. You got two properties. You got lot owner A and lot owner B over here. Let's just say that the property line is right here. And they got their houses like this, right? They got their houses like this. And whoever has more, whatever. Here, let me try not to make it two more. Let me try to make this a little more even where the property line is. Let's just say that the property line is almost down the middle. So it's just about equal on both sides, just about. Doesn't have to be. It could be more on one side than the other, doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter who's, look, if you got a fence, he's not just gonna have one fence hanging from his side, you know, it's gonna be on the other side too. And they'll probably swing out both ways, right? To swing open. But it doesn't matter, even if it is his that's on the other